What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. We got some updates. Finally have the ball rolling, as Andrew Silverberg would say. I don't know if you remember Andrew Silverberg. He used to say that all the time. We get the ball rolling. But it's rolling, and Reeves is talking, cast members talking about, here we hear that word again,
extraordinary.
This is amazing. All the high praises before we get cracking with this Batman 2 movie. Certainly the excitement is starting to begin for me, and especially some of the people who really enjoyed Matt Reeves' first outing for this movie. And they're saying things that are certainly piquing our interest as to what is it that they're going to do. I'm not sure if they've made any specific comments, but certainly comments about doing something we've never done before, villains that we've never done before. We have our guess as to perhaps who may be appearing in this film. But Brian, what's going on with the Batman 2?
All of this stems from the Emmys, where Matt Reeves and a number of the folks associated with the Penguin were in attendance, given all the nominations. Only one win for the Penguin. Kristen Milioti won for her role. Colin Farrell was beaten in his category, which was interesting.
Who beat him?
Oh, I don't even remember now. I'd have to look it up. But because quite honestly, I didn't care. I thought that, I mean, you have your own opinions. It was interesting. Like Andor won for writing. Milioti wins for acting. Both shows had a ton of nominations, and people who didn't, and the shows themselves that didn't win, that's how it goes, which is fine. I think he lost to that series Adolescence.
Yes,
on Netflix,
yes,
limited series.
yes.
I think he lost to, was it Stephen Graham?
Yes,
I think that's who he lost
yes.
to, actually, now that I think about it, which I can't really kill that, but obviously I'm partial.
Yes.
And I think the transformation of Oz Cobb was certainly worthy. Anyway, so Matt Reeves is at the Emmys, so he finally starts talking in earnest. And actually, I thought he gave us a fair amount of information. So first, let's start at the high level, and then we'll get to the specifics. In the category of stating the very obvious, quote, "It's been a long journey."
You don't say.
But I'm so incredibly excited, and I'm really proud of the script that me and Mattson Tomlin did. And then he added, quote, to your point, I feel really excited about the idea that we feel we are going to reach farther and do even more than we did in the first one, confirming that he has shared the film script with Robert Pattinson, which, as we know, that also went to Jeffrey Wright. We also know that Colin Farrell has read it because he weighed in on it. So Reeves went on to say they will be shooting next spring. So he said April, beginning of May, that is the final shoot date for the movie. So if you're doing the reference point to some of what's going on in the DCU, that is actually a little bit later, around the same time as Man of Tomorrow will be filming.
Okay. Yeah.
But then he gets into a little bit of the story. Here's where, the interest level starts to go up, because he talks about where he wants to focus the movie. So he says, quote, we're staffing up. We're starting to get the crew back together. We're getting ready. We're entering pre-production. We're making the movie in the spring. Super excited. Because of what the first movie was and what part 2 is, which is so much a detective story, the idea of trying to protect the secrets of this movie are super important because it's a mystery. That would be an extra level of heartbreak if part of it started to get out. You want to keep the surprise so the fans can have the fun experience I always loved going to the movies, which was to go and be surprised, end quote. So doubling down on the mystery and detective angle, part 1 to part 2.
That's why.
Any complaints? I was like, any complaints with that?
I mean, when you said that, it reminded me of ESB, Empire Strikes Back. Like, what would that movie be if everybody knew what was coming, right? So the fact that he's making effort and the whole crew is making an effort to keep this secretive is what gets us excited for wanting to see this movie in the theater.
Now, he talks about his conversation with Robert Pattinson when he showed him the script. He's Batman, so if he doesn't like it, that's not good. So I was super excited because I thought he really would like it. Because the things that it does for his character, for Batman, and for Bruce Wayne has never been done before in this way. And I had a feeling he would respond in this way. The fact that he did was incredibly encouraging, end quote.
I just keep thinking about what James Gunn is going to do with his DCU, but that's for another show.
It is. We want to do a side-by-side here because this is a competition, but there doesn't necessarily have to be a true loser if you're Warner Brothers, right? This is a character with a library where you can do this and have two successful versions of the character on screen at the same time, which is really something we haven't seen achieved before with Batman. So that in some ways, this is a noble experiment. But you're right. I just keep in the back of my head when I see all these comments. The one thing in the back of my head is that James Gunn reaction to the script where he basically was like, is good but needs work. And then I hear this and like I hear it from the other side and they're kind of like, it's next level.
Yeah, it's like
that's what I mean by like there's a little creative tension there, or envy, or both ways. Right? We haven't seen. Well, I was just about to say James Gunn's script for DCU Batman. Okay, it is going to be that, but we haven't seen that formally yet, so
yeah.
we haven't seen a reaction for that. Anyway, so we've got detective story doubling down on that extra mystery in part 2. We've got doing more things for Batman and for Bruce Wayne, but then. This to me was the real gold of what Reeves was saying. So he sits down with Josh Horowitz at the Emmys. See, Horowitz gets people to talk.
Right.
And he says, I knew with the way the Batman ended, it was leaving us on the precipice. And the way the events happen in Penguin, there's an exploration to be had. And one of the explorations for me was to do something that pushes even further into the character of Bruce Wayne. The first story is so much about Batman. And I always wanted in the movies, and let's say we get to make 3, I have no idea, that I always wanted the movies to be focused on his character. A lot of the other films, which I love, once you get past the origin tale, then you start telling the rogues gallery and that character's arc. I never wanted to lose Rob, meaning Pattinson, at the center of these stories. So that is really what we set our aim on. Picking the right villain that digs into what that does and goes into his past and his life, meaning Bruce, that's what drove the discussion. We're super excited about it, and I will say it's never really been done in a movie before, end quote. That is it right there. Let's interrogate it, yeah.
I think he's referring to either Hush or Court of Owls or a combination of the two. I'm not sure, but Hush is the first thing that comes to mind when he says those things.
100%. And I actually tend to think you could do both, right? Because we've talked about Hush's, you could modify those two storylines to make Hush like a lead Talon, for example, within the court as an agent of the Court of Owls. You could clearly take some of both DNA, put them together, and have, because I think the question sort of becomes with Court of Owls, there isn't, at least in the outside of that story, there's not really like a point villain, right? There's not really like a single individual character who Batman is up against one-on-one. He's up against the shadow of this conspiracy. And even when he gets roped into fighting the Talons, it's like the Talons are a collective. There's not really a Joker or a Riddler, right? So making Hush like the Talon above all the Talons could be a way cinematically to give people an audience like, all right, here's your dude, here's your foe that represents this force that connects to the Wayne family and connects to all these families in Gotham.
Here's what I see. Here's what I'm looking at. Here's what I'm thinking about. As you see Batman, he's not going to be fighting regular dudes.
These are ninjas, assassins.
He's going to be fighting fighters. And this is an opportunity. I think the best Batman that has showed his fighting abilities was in Batman, Michael Keaton, for me. And I think in this one, he is going to be fighting people, obviously, that are very well trained. I mean, he did it also in Batman Begins, but we never really saw a lot of his abilities in that. It wasn't shown to its full potential, I think. So this one piques my interest because he is not going to be fighting just regular thugs. He's going to be fighting guys that can fight, and we'll be able to see how he is able to take them down using his abilities. So that'll be interesting for me to see.
First off, I think it's kind of obvious, but really encouraging to see Reeves recognizing and giving us the thing we always suspected, which was that for the second movie to work, Bruce Wayne had to evolve. Now, how he's going to evolve specifically will probably ultimately determine how we view this movie, like how Pattinson captures that. But he's clearly telling you, in the first movie, we see Batman in the suit a lot. We see a very underdeveloped, socially awkward, almost, reclusive Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
The second one, he's clearly telling you, to me at least, he's telling you, expect less Batman. Expect more Bruce, because he's focusing now on the evolution of Bruce's character. This is also why I think Court of Owls makes a lot of sense, because that storyline puts a microscope on the Wayne family history. And we know that was hinted in the first film. So to me, if you're going to do that, part of the mystery in the detective work is Bruce Wayne discovering his own family's legacy and the lies that lie within it, the truths that are within it. That's something he doesn't need to be Batman in order to do, right? So I think I interpret this as expect less of the Batsuit. That doesn't mean that when he's in the Batsuit, he can't do cool things or fights or whatever. It just, to me, he was in the suit a lot in the first movie, way more. Like if you think of Batman Begins, you don't see the suit till an hour in. Dark Knight Rises, he doesn't make his comeback till over an hour in. There's a long history already of Batman being held back in these movies and not really doing much in the suit. This feels to me like we're going to see Pattinson as Pattinson becoming something else. Now, whether we like that, how classic we view that will be critical, but that's how I interpret this. And that's why I think, like I said, I think Court of Owls makes so much sense, because you don't need him in the shadows and in the cape and cowl the entire time for that to work.
I wonder what Penguin's presence will be. Would it be another scene of the Batman talking to Cobblepot, or what perhaps this could imply Bruce Wayne having conversations with Cobblepot, being in the position that the Penguin is in, I guess, in the city, a person of somewhat power. It'll be interesting to see how he fits into all of this.
Well, that's funny you say that, because wasn't that what the Riddler told him in the first one? You're a part of all this. How am I a part of all this? Right. That was kind of the hook, right? We had the video. Right? I think the video will be key, right? Where where Batman was lured to the one place where the Riddler's showing the video that basically implies his family was dirty. I think the way they've set up Farrell and the Penguin, which is kind of fun, is he can be on either side of this particular story, and it makes sense. So he could be aligned with sort of the Talons of the Court of Owls. He could be on that side. He could also be somewhat, not aligned, but he could be somewhat helpful to Batman in this one, because maybe Batman is seeking information on the Talons, where they're coming from, what's going, and like Penguin would know that. So maybe there's some sort of trade of information. So he can sort of operate anywhere on this board in this particular story, I think, and still retain, he can be a villain, but because of his own show, there's things we like about him. So I like that. We don't really know where we know his part is small, but we don't know which side of the equation, or whether he's on both sides of this that he's going to show up in. So What we do know is that, I mean, Farrell, I'm sure, will crush the scenes that he's in. We also don't know, will he interact with Batman? Will he interact with Bruce? Or will he interact with both? Because in the first one, obviously, he interacts with both, but he doesn't know that he's interacting with the same person.
I think what would be dope is that if he interacts with Batman, Batman perhaps right now is distracted by what's going on with Hush and whoever he has to deal with. But he reminds the Penguin, things ain't this isn't over.
Yeah, that he
You know
knows.
what I'm saying?
Well, it basically
Yes.
implies he knows what he did. Like,
Yes, yes,
this isn't
yes.
finished
That would
yet.
be dope that for him to insinuate, and then the Penguin being like, the way there's this one scene in Justice League Frontier, I forget what the name of it was, where Batman meets for the first time Martian Manhunter, but he hasn't seen him in his true form. And they're sort of working together. But before Batman leaves, he reminds him or tells him, I don't know which side you're on or something like that, but I have a $10,000 piece of meteorite for the other one. For you, all I need is a penny for a book of matches. And then he leaves, and Martian Manhunter's eyes just widened. That was just dope. That was just like, that's Batman stuff.
Yeah.
That's what we need to see, Batman stuff. And I think Matt Reeves is going to deliver that in this movie.
If it is Court of Owls, so now we're down the rabbit hole of assuming that. That's not necessarily fair to Matt Reeves either, because we had talked about at one point, would it be a Mr. Freeze story because it was maybe being shot in winter? Like, we don't know this, right? We're taking a guess. But if it's Court of Owls, and Matt Reeves is talking about pushing this thing to places we haven't seen, there's a fairly obvious place in Court of Owls where he could do that. I'd be curious as to see your reaction if he tries to put it on screen, which is to sum up, Batman discovers that there are these hidden bases around the city that are sort of access points for the organization and for the talents. And as part of his investigation, he winds up having to fight his way through something called the Labyrinth. So obviously a mythological parallel to Theseus or whatever. But in this case, in the Court of Owls story, he basically is trapped in the Labyrinth at one point, and he's tortured, starved. He's down there for like days and nights on end, where he starts to go crazy, literally. Like, he starts to go insane. And then there's some connection to, I think it's his great-grandfather, who you find out was tortured in a similar fashion. Like, how, like, you find out that his great-grandfather, this is where the Court of Owls history crosses over with the Wayne family history. And you find out that the Court of Owls has had dealings with, I think his name is Alan Wayne. And so there's something about that connection that at the last minute, Bruce is able to sort of piece together and sort of rally his strength, and he defeats the Talons in the tunnels of the Labyrinth and he escapes, which then leads to the Court of Owls unleashing their full army on the city. And that becomes part 2 in that comic book series. But that sequence, the idea of Batman captured, tortured, going crazy, basically. When I read the Reeves comments and you think about how dark the Batman Part 1 got, there's something about that feels like something Reeves might want to go to. And I'm curious, do you think that works on the big screen? Do you think audiences would respond to seeing Batman in that type of predicament? Or is that too horror genre, too kind of Saw, and too like classic comic book to put on a big screen?
I mean, I've read a lot of Batman comic books, and Batman has been in situations where you always ask yourself, how is he going to get out of this situation, right? To me, also, it reminds me of The Dark Knight Rises, where he was caught and back is broken and he's sort of tortured with what's going on the TV screen that Bane left for him in his cell so he can watch what was going on.
Do you think that works, though? Like, do you think that's because that movie's flawed, right? That movie's not bad, but it's flawed. Do you think that whole sequence works really well?
I think it can work. I would assume that the Court of Owls perhaps know more than we think we know. You know, perhaps they know that he's Batman, but won't like them. There's people that know perhaps who's running stuff, but they won't dare say who it is, right? Perhaps that's the same respect, maybe. Perhaps.
Because I think that sequence of The Dark Knight Rises is awkward, to be honest. Because you get to that pit, and there's that guy in the pit who basically dumps all this exposition on you about Bane's history and Ra's al Ghul's history. Like, it just kind of goes on, where you're just like, this is Christopher Nolan really trying to tie things back to Batman Begins and give this meaning and bring things full circle. And it's a little clunky. Like, I don't know that I thoroughly enjoy the climb, because he does it like 3 or 4 times right before he gets out. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so that's why there's a little bit of, is this really the Batman story that I came for? You know what I mean? And that's where when I read this, I'm like, it reads really cool in the story on the pages where you have multiple issues to flesh this out. And again, we are guessing, but when I read it, I'm like, this does feel like closest to the Reeves universe of any Batman we've seen. Of like, I mean, think about Pattinson in the first one, how tortured that guy is, how messed up in his own head, that we're like, you know, he, as I said, he hasn't even reconciled his relationship with Alfred, let alone, you know, his situation with his parents. And then we have these nuggets of that his dad was dirty with the ties to Falcone. We have the video. Like, I could see where you could take him to a place of insanity or borderline insanity. Like, I see how that could happen for this Batman or this Bruce Wayne. I'm just trying to figure out if that's a 15 to 20 minute set piece slash kind of character study. Is our mainstream audience is going to gravitate to that?
Will it get us back to the 3 hours that we don't want?
A little bit. There's a little bit of like, how long is this going to take? And it's like, again, there, as much as gritty and realism and dark, and I get that that's the way that this has gone ever since Nolan took over the franchise, he still has to be Batman to your point, he still has to be Batman in the end. And when we talk about the DCU Batman, this will come up again. I think the first one, to me, works because he's enough pure essence Batman from a detective standpoint, and he does enough action-wise in the context of being a young, underdeveloped, less than full potential Batman, to where you can kind of tolerate all of it and be like, okay, we're going somewhere. This is step one. It works as a step one. I'm just debating in my head if he's, you know, if he's without food and water and delirious and he's not fighting and he's just sort of in a cell and you're seeing him hallucinate, it can be cool, but it could also be tedious.
We shall see, I think. But that's the exciting part of this movie, especially knowing him and what he was able to do previously with the first Batman, is give us a trailer that has us clinging on all the way till that movie releases.
I am excited, though. I will say this. If they are going to make Bruce Wayne the focal point, I am excited to see Pattinson's take on Bruce Wayne public figure. Like, that I actually do want to see, perhaps more than I've ever wanted to see it from another version, because of how we left the first movie, right? That with the woman touching his arm and the narration where he says he realizes what he's doing is not enough. So I'm expecting in this one, Bruce Wayne is now doing good. Like, he is now using his resources. He's now a public figure, you know, opening centers for, opening orphanages, doing things, right? And like, I think that could be exciting to see what that world looks like.
And retrofitting the city for his
Correct.
use.
Correct.
That would be dope.
Yes.
That would be dope for me.
And maybe that's what brings, maybe that's, you know, if they retain this idea that there's a network already across the city, maybe his infrastructure collides with their infrastructure. And now we've got the investigation. What did I find? Where does this lead? And then it leads back to, hey, our family was not as saintly as they're typically portrayed in all these stories. So,
but as Alfred said, you know, he was sort of desperate he was doing it for a reason that was, you know what I'm
no, I
saying?
don't, yeah.
So
I think there'll be people who politically I think there'll be people who will worry that like Reeves is going to set about tearing down the entire kind of protagonist identity of the Wayne family. And I don't think that's the goal, and I don't think that's the point. I think the point is to humanize them a little bit because, like I said, the comics are and the shows are a little bit guilty sometimes of making it seem like every person associated with this family was 100% virtuous for 100% of the time. And like, we know that nobody is that.
Yeah, exactly. Only
Right.
Jesus.
And right, exactly. No, none of us, none of the mere mortals are that. So the idea of, even when we have the thing about Falcone, right? Where it's like, he's kind of talking about Thomas Wayne and you're realizing Thomas Wayne had dealings with Falcone. You're like, well, that's not an alignment you want. But if you listen to the way John Turturro describes Thomas Wayne, it's from a position of respect that this is a good guy. Like, I'm a bad guy, but I see that this guy's a good guy. We just have a shared history that you weren't aware of, right? So there's this balance of, he's not trying to make, Thomas Wayne was every bit the gangster I was. That's not what he says.
No, yeah.
He says we have a mutual respect because of this instance that brought us together. And the instance really is kind of Thomas Wayne still trying to do good in the context of this underworld. But yeah, I think it's going to be more of that.
He took it overboard. The other guy took it
Yeah,
overboard.
it's going to be more of that. I mean, it's going to be more of that. It's like the Wayne family was pushed into, or sort of had to make its bed in certain places, maybe in morally shaky ground. But then again, I mean, Batman's entire existence is arguably morally shaky ground, right? He lives in the gray because he has to. So like, why would his whole family be like goody two shoes and all of a sudden he's the only one that has to, have that? So
what do you think of Milioti not being in the film?
I'm a little disappointed, but I think there's a plan. Reeves does refer to negotiations happening regarding Penguin season 2, which, as I told you, the second the Emmys were baked. Now all of a sudden, come on, this is all category fraud for the award, which is what we're talking about here. She got her Emmy. By the way, did you see? Oh, she got her Emmy. Did you see? She dropped it. Like, so she wins the award. She gives a speech. There's like a photo of her later going to the after party, and she falls down the steps going into the club, and she drops the Emmy. It just like bangs on the ground. I'm like, oh man,
Wow.
she took it well, but I was like, that blows. Anyway, I'm a little disappointed, but I like I said, I think the plan is they really want to retain some of the exclusivity of the Penguin versus the exclusivity of the Batman. That's why Farrell is keep him small in the movie. Maybe in part, if they did get to do the part 3, I still think you could see a culmination at some point. But I think by doing this, it actually makes the Penguin a little cooler because it's almost like we're not gonna whet your appetite with any Milioti in the Batman Part 2. If you want to see her again, come back for season 2, and you'll be a few years removed, and you'll be really excited when the next iteration of Sophia Falcone is on screen. So I actually think that's part of what he's doing, is that he just doesn't want to overexpose his characters too quickly.
I'm certainly excited. I'm pretty sure everybody else is excited for this next iteration of the Batman from Matt Reeves.
We have to throw one other thing. Reeves, like, he's not on socials, right? So he doesn't do the James Gunn talk to the fans every day. So his outlets for public are basically when he's got something to promote. I thought he stirred the pot on the whole, very quietly stirred the pot on the DCU-Elseworlds thing. Just kind of like lobbed a little something in there for people. I can't tell because we don't know these guys personally, like what's going on. But he could have taken a certain company line, and he kind of didn't. So listen to this quote, which he says at the end, and see what you think. Because he was asked about the franchise being Elseworlds. And he just said, quote, "Well, we haven't talked about anything like that. We have had conversations about how things could work and all that kind of stuff, just in general. So, of course, it would be a lot of fun," meaning to be part of the DCU. "What I really want to do is play out these stories that we began, arrive at the conclusion I've hoped we would arrive at from the beginning." So listen to that. I've hoped. Not we've hoped. I've hoped. That's his trilogy. It's very exciting. I mean, it's DC, so like it is Elseworld, but it is DC, so it's theirs as well. And what the future brings and what I am doing will become clear when it comes, end quote. That is an open-ended response. to what his project is. Now,
Yeah.
we'll get into in the other show why we do think there should be two separate ones ultimately. But he could have just said, this is totally separate. This is something that we started before the universe came along. They're gracious enough to let us finish it. We're excited about finishing it. Everything else, talk to James and Peter. He could have said that. He didn't say that. He clearly is saying,
Yeah.
we'll see. What do you make of Matt Reeves finally weighing in on the other side of this and saying, and leaving things a little bit for people to talk about?
I think he's, from the beginning, just wanted to tell his story, the story that he had in his mind. And he wants to finish it. And I think he will. I think he will be given the opportunity to finish it, because what this next Batman 2 will be. But I think we could sort of suspect that there was clearly some communication between James Gunn or his people and Matt Reeves and his people about where this Batman 2 will be, and hence the delay and the changes perhaps that Matt Reeves had to make. And so that conversation, I don't think is completely closed, but this is certainly an Elseworlds thing. And I think Matt Reeves just wants to finish his trilogy and his vision of what his Batman is. And James Gunn, I think, is just simply scared of what
Oh,
this
I don't
could
know if
be.
he's scared. I don't think that's fair to James Gunn. I don't think he's scared.
Nervous. Let's say nervous, because again, his DCU Batman has to be on par in terms of excellence of what Batman is. Doesn't have to be a better movie or anything like that, but Batman in this world has to be still a dope
Correct.
Batman.
I think that's, yeah. I think it's that, and we'll get into it in our part 2 here, which is the DCU Batman and what it needs to be and what it should look like. But I think it has to be the right Batman for his universe. That, which brings us into does it necessarily have to be the best Batman of the two? I actually don't even know that it has to be. It has to be the right Batman. It's kind of like the Kurt Russell in Miracle, where he says, I'm not looking for the best players, I'm looking for the right ones, right? Like, and that really does matter. But I do think Matt Reeves throwing that thing about, we hope we get to make 3, but I'm not sure. And then saying, I really hope I hope the story that I wanted to make, right? There's a very personalization that he's putting into these comments. I agree with you. He is starting the public lobby to get the part 3 greenlit. And when I hear him say it this way, it does go back to some of our prior conversations of, would there be a part 3 if the DCU Batman is off the ground, which it will be by then. And these comments make me feel like there is some internal question and tension about that someone in that company, I think we can suspect which side of the camp is doing this, is kind of like, it was too late to stop the train for Batman Part 2, but it's not too late to stop it for Part 3. And Matt Reeves is saying, no, we're going to do something so cool that you're going to have to give us Part 3. That's what feels like it's kind of going on here.
Demand it.
Yeah, and it makes me kind of wonder, if I'm Matt Reeves finalizing the script and shooting Batman Part 2, does he hedge at all? Does he, Part 1, there's no, Batman, in the Batman, there's no hedging at the end of it, right? It is yes, there's a resolution, not a resolution, right? Yes, he wins the day, sort of, but the city's flooded. The Penguin picks up with that idea. Will Part 2 have a resolution to it, where if they don't make a Part 3, you can look at Parts 1 and 2 and feel like you actually have a somewhat completed arc? Or does he cliffhang it and basically be like, if you want to see how this ends, there has to be a Part 3. You have to give me that. Like, I think that's an interesting dilemma for him as a filmmaker into how much he wants to put into, wrapping things up, quote unquote, in Part 2.
The dollars will decide that.
This has been my point all along, is like, at the end of the day, if this thing was to do north of $1 billion and they don't make a sequel, someone would get fired for that. There's just no precedent in Hollywood history for movies making that kind of money that are not end points, right? We're not talking about No Way Home, even Rise of Skywalker, which did make, which I think if you're looking for the parallel to Doomsday, Rise of Skywalker is it, right? It made $1 billion, but nobody views that as a success. But that was an end point. There's no precedent for a part 1 or a part 2 of something making the kind of money that we think this is going to make, and then Hollywood being like, we're good. Like, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. Especially that with the original intent
That's what I'm
of doing
saying.
the trilogy, right?
This is not Inception, right? Like, there's not like a standalone movie that makes big bucks, and they're like, yeah, but we always knew it was a solo deal. Like, this is meant to be a trilogy, and if it's making big bank, Hollywood has never said no.
We gotta go. Yeah, very interesting stuff happening with the Batman 2 and Matt Reeves' world of Gotham and Batman and his vision, which we are here for and want to see. Again, I've said this before, we're interested in anything Batman. Doesn't have to be a part of a world or anything like that. I mean, how many episodes of Batman the Animated Series where there's probably no mention of anything else other than seeing what Batman is doing in that moment, in that world? We didn't care. We were there for that.
No, I mean, a lot of that show, if you really were to oversimplify it, is kind of like a night in the life of Batman, and that's all you need. I mean, that's really all you need. So no, look, the excitement, we had this as our most exciting thing of 5 pretty exciting things that DC had coming up for the next couple of years. I think when I read these comments, he's doing nothing to put us off the scent here. This feels like it could be special, feels like it could be different. And even if I do think I think he actually is, not consciously, but I think he's left real nice room for there to be a different and awesome DCU Batman alongside this. That doesn't diminish the fact that I absolutely want to see where this goes. And even if you don't love the characterization in the first one, there has to be some part of you that wants to see where this iteration ends up.
Yeah, man. So let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of what's currently happening with Matt Reeves' Batman 2. Where is it going? Who the villain is going to be? There's certainly a lot of exciting things to look forward to with this finally starting. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I can't wait for that first trailer. I'm excited to see that trailer.
I don't know if he could top the teaser from the first one. That's talk about stuff that's hard to top.
If he can, Brian, or or at least on par in terms of giving us something dope that keeps us hanging on for the next trailer, which he was able to even top that and get us excited. Hey, I'm here for that. And then we'll see the movie. And
I was just about to say, I'm off the top of my head, but I'm thinking about his comments, thinking about what you said about trailer, thinking about the fandom teaser. What about a teaser that is basically all in the light, all Bruce, like has almost like a more hopeful daylight type of tone, except for one very short snippet at the end to remind you what this is, as like a counterpoint to the fandom teaser, Nirvana, all nighttime, all black and red, all Batman. What about like you literally 180 that?
I think it would be dope because, again, that was one of the things that I sort of was a bit disappointing, and not so much because of where he was at. All right, this is Batman year 2. He's still figuring it out, right? So to give us something that gives us that duality with Bruce Wayne and Batman, I think is a good way to sort of differentiate it from the original outing or the first look at this movie. So if he's able to do that with Bruce Wayne, I think that'll be dope. That is like, if we're watching the trailer and we see no hints of Batman, but we certainly see something that's exciting that's with Bruce Wayne, that's even better to me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
He's all dapper in the suit. That's what he can look like. And so I'm saying if he looks like that, and he's giving a speech, and like it's Gotham because there's these Easter eggs around, right? That are letting you know like what he's talking about, or like they don't even say it's Bruce. It's just they show him giving a speech, like, and it's letting you know that you're in the world again, but he looks different. He looks all happy, like all that sort of stuff. And then there's something at the end where basically like the switch flips and you just kind of see the transformation, and it's just that's it. Like I don't know, that's at least an idea for how he could frame this as different but exciting and give away nothing. Give away nothing because he's obviously telling you he's going to give away nothing, right? That the trailers are going to be cut in such a way that you kind of don't really know much of anything going in. Clearly, he does not want you to know that. So
I can't wait, and I'm sure the Batman fans can't wait either. Let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of all this, and if you don't drink water, drink some LaCroix. We'll see you next time.